Democratic Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut. It's good to have you on board this morning.
It really is. We can talk about a lot of national things, but let's talk about about something that happened in the state that you love, that we both love and feel a connection to. Another tragedy, yet another tragedy coming out of Sandy Hook.
Yeah, this is absolutely. Jeremy Richmond, one of the fathers of one of the little girls who was killed in Sandy Hook, killed himself yesterday morning at the town hall in Newtown. We don't have any more information than that, except that Jeremy and his wife had started a foundation named after their daughter that was dedicated to the specific purpose of understanding the human brain and trying to be able to figure out how to intercede before somebody does harm to others or to themselves. The idea that he would take his life is just a reminder that there are still a lot of mysteries inside our brains that we still have not unlocked. And it's also just another reminder that the ripples of grief in these communities are never ending. People ask, how's Newtown doing? I said, listen, Newtown is fundamentally broken. It's a place that is doing better than it was 6 years ago, but will never, ever heal.
Of course, it'll never be the same.
Never be the same.
And it feels like, especially after hearing the two Parkland students died by suicide in the past 2 weeks, that we're looking at an epidemic, gun violence. But I wonder now if this ripple effect will be the next one. When we have generations of students and families dealing with gun violence, the ripple effect is this grief that is so overwhelming that it cannot be seen.
And by the way, I've got to say, just like a lot of us grew up worrying about a nuclear war, and we would go through drills and figure out,
and the anxiety
and have us hide under the desks. And there were, I know in our schools at least, there were fallout shelters in every school, and if there was a nuclear attack, you ran down there, and that was the specter. Nuclear attack from the Soviet Union. Now, our children...
This is the fear they have.
Right. Our children, especially post-Newtown, have this fear.
So, my first grader, when he was in kindergarten last year, came back from school one day and explained to me that he and 26 other classmates had been shoved into a bathroom and quiet and stand still for as long as possible because they were practicing for if a bad person got into the building. Wow. These ripples of fear and tension and grief are everywhere. Nobody can hide from this epidemic. And if you want to know why the politics are changing in Washington, it's because everybody is now face to face with this, whether you're in a suburban school district or an urban school district. And that's why ultimately this is going to change. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
And there was a heartbreaking interview that Kate Snow did last night on NBC Nightly News with two young Parkland women who have survivor's guilt. And then they talked about it, and they rely on each other. They reached out to each other on camera, but they're not always with their friends, and so you now worry about all of these other kids.
And I think you just have to remember what's happening every single day in Baltimore and New Orleans and Hartford, right? Every single person in those communities knows someone, a close friend who's been shot. And so, in these very unique places like Newtown or Aurora, there's a specific kind of grief. But in every single poor neighborhood in this country, it's never ending, and the trauma is never ending, which is why it's just time.
Senator, why, every time there's one of these tragedies, we think maybe this time there'll be enough political momentum to break through. But after Newtown, after Parkland, those hopes sort of vanish after a few months. I have a daughter who's a school teacher who, does this training to get ready for attacks. Right. Comes up and talks about the trauma for her and her students. Why do we keep putting ourselves through this without taking political action?
Because there's not going to be a before or after moment on the issue of gun violence in this country. This is about political power. The NRA developed a political machine over the course of 20 to 30 years, and our movement, the anti-gun movement, is really only 5 years old, and we are building our own machine. I think actually today we're probably stronger than the gun lobby is. We beat 18 A-rated members of Congress, NRA A-rated members of Congress in 2018. But until we are just as mature as they are, there isn't going to be that epiphany. It's just a matter of us getting bigger and stronger. And I was with the Parkland kids. I was with Emma and the rest yesterday. It's their movement now, and I will tell you, a lot of politicians politicians in this place are pretty afraid of what they're going to be doing leading up into the 2020 elections.
Mike Barnicle is with us in New York and has a question. Mike.
Senator, one of the ripples of grief that you were talking about is beyond belief, and it affected Newtown deeply, affects Newtown today. Certainly probably affected Jeremy Richmond, and it is the fact that, and I'm not going to use his name, but one individual promulgated, promoted, and achieved the almost incomprehensible feat of having some people in this country believe that Newtown was staged. And as you know better than most, people in Newtown, some of the parents were forced to move, to virtually hide in public in this country. What do we do about not just that one aspect of it, what he did, but the fact that, you know, something like that takes a life of its own?
Well, listen, I mean, I'll use his name. We're talking about Alex Jones, and the fact of the matter is that the companies that allow people like him, conspiracy theorists, to be able to purvey lies have a responsibility. There is no constitutional duty on an internet company to allow somebody to terrorize parents of mass tragedies like Alex Jones did for so long. The Newtown families are proceeding with a court case to try to hold him accountable, but the companies that allow for this nonsense, this garbage, to be spread out over the internet have a responsibility and a duty themselves to do something earlier than they did in the case of InfoWars. I wish that these parents could shut it all out, but they can't. They cannot. And some of them have frankly turned to chasing down these conspiracy theorists as a full-time job because they see it as their responsibility to make sure that everyone knows what happened to their child. And think about how that sort of second victimization works when every single day you're logging on to the internet trying to find the people who are denying the death of your child. That's something that none of us can comprehend. And while we can't ever make these lunatics completely disappear, there are some big commercial actors like Facebook, like Twitter, who can do a much better job of policing their space.
Like Facebook, like Twitter, like Google,
right?
Like internet service providers. They are broadcasting the hate over the air. They are spreading the lies. Google, on the search engine, something I know way too much about, like conspiracy theorists put garbage there, and Google has a responsibility to not publish it at the top of their lists.
I know that we sometimes, they sometimes are so big that they feel like the government, but they aren't. They are a private commercial actor that can decide what they spread and what they don't. There are restrictions on government as to what kind of restrictions we can place on speech, but these big commercial players can make values decisions. They can.
And guess what? Guess what? If it's not on the search engine, people don't go to it.
Right.
So they're the ones who are basically publishing an index that leads people directly to these hate sites.
I wanted to ask you, because you're in foreign relations and you get access to this stuff, what about the Russian connection with the NRA and Maria Butina and all the rest? What do we know now about why was Russia working through the NRA?
Well, listen, one of the reasons why, to connect it back to your prior conversation, we need to see the report is because there may be information inside that report about this connection between Russia and the NRA. We know that Mueller was looking into this question. We know that the NRA was all of a sudden flush with cash in 2016, cash that they all of a sudden don't have any longer.
30 million.
These are hemorrhaging dollars. And so it's hard for me to know, but I have a feeling somebody knows. So
where did the 30 million come from?
I mean, that would be nice to know in a report that right now only one member of the United States government has access to.
Are we going to get to it?
I mean, we have to get to it. He has to give us this report. But here's a question. What is he going to redact from this report? Is he going to take out all the information regarding Russian money that may have been funneled into political interest groups in the United States because it is, quote unquote, sensitive and not available to members of Congress? There are going to be some fights coming up.